All right, cool. I think I might be live now. So, welcome back, rock stars. I'm Lid Shaw. This is Recording Studio Rockstars. And in this video, we're going to try once again to take a quick look at the silencer plugin from Black Salt Audio. This is a killer gate that is going to help take your cymbals to a place where they die. All right, so in this, I tried doing this last week actually as a live stream, and YouTube threw away my entire video, so it didn't work. I don't have a way to see it right now, confirm that it's rolling, so hopefully everything's going good this time. If you're here and it's working, drop a comment in and maybe I'll see it in the chat too. So the silencer plugin is a very cool plugin that comes from Black Salt Audio, and hopefully you can see that on my screen right there. This is it's a great expression here, where cymbals go to die. You know, as you probably know, when you're recording drums, a lot of times you can get crazy screaming cymbal bleed into the drum mics, your close mics, like your snare mic, particularly. Sometimes the tom mics also get a ton of cymbals coming in. They'll get crash cymbals on the downbeat and stuff like that. But particularly the hi-hat bleeding into the snare mic is a classic challenge that we all have to deal with, and it can make mixing very difficult later. And sorry, I'm just trying to get my video good here on the side. And so we'll reach for a gate plugin as an option to gate the snare so that the gate only opens up when the snare hits and the rest of the time it's closed. But not all gates are created equally, and some work better than others. And this is a cool new one that comes in from Black Salt Audio. They make a bunch of other great plugins, and this one is their silencer. And so it lets you do things you might expect from a gate, but it seems to have a little bit of, maybe it's got some artificial intelligence in there or something that's helping it understand what is actually your snare and what is actually a cymbal. So I've got a session pulled up here, and we can take a quick look at this and see what's going on. Now, if I close this right here, you'll see that I've got drums. These are my snare mics right here. I've got some overhead mics down here. This is a session that comes in from an artist named Hunter Cross that I'm working with. Great rock and roll artist. I'll leave a link to this and his music in the description of the video as well, so you can check that out. And this is a live recording of a drum set on stage. So the band's rocking out, the drums all recorded live. Things are a little bit chaotic. And I'm just going to play you the drums only so you can hear what's going on. But you'll get a sense of, here's what it sounds like before I put any of the silencer plugin on anything. So this is the raw drum sound, and you can just hear what's going on with the cymbals. Here's the hi-hat crashing through the drum mics. So you can hear that, the hi-hat's wide open and it's clearly crashing right through all the mics in the drum kit, but particularly the close mics as well. And this is a mix that I worked on for him where I got the drums dialed in, and I'm just going to take off the silencer plugin and then put it back on for you. Then here I think is a ride section where the drums have the ride screaming through. Not quite as bad. And then the outro is particularly egregious, where there's a crash cymbal, and it's coming through all the drum mics. Right. So as you can hear, those are all classic situations of, different drum parts being played. Now, let me pull up the snare mic and we'll just look quickly at what's going on with this. So here's the silencer plugin on the snare mic. Make sure my video is not covering it. And once again, the hi-hat crashing, and you've got the open hat bleeding through. The plugin is not enabled yet. All right, so this is just the snare mic, so it's a little less crazy than having all the mics going, but you can still get a sense of what's going on with it. And then if I enable the gate, listen to that, it just completely takes the cymbal out of it. So again, raw snare mic with the silencer plugin on right there. I'm going to give you a tour of these other ones, and then I'll show you what the different sounds are doing too. So here's the bottom mic on the snare. Let me pull this up and then bypass it. So this is the raw bottom mic. Whoops. Nope, it's not bypassed. There we go. Bypassed. Nope, wrong one. Here we go. My bad. All right, so bypassed. Okay, this one doesn't have so much cymbals in it. So this one's less of an issue. It's got some kick in there. Bypass it, and it still takes all that bleed out of the background. Listen to that. Again, bottom mic, noises coming in, enabled, just takes all that noise out, and you just get the attack of the snare. So that's pretty handy. Now let me go back up to the top mic, and we'll start messing with some of the settings here. So let me give you a quick walkthrough. Now at the top of the silencer plugin, you'll notice that you can select what kind of drum you're doing. So you can either select a kick drum, you can select the top of the snare, the bottom of the snare, or a tom. In this case, it's the top of the snare. So then you come down here and you got classic adjustments like the threshold here. So when you roll the snare, you'll see the snare show up in the window here, the waveforms, and you can just adjust this threshold to taste. And then the next, you have reduction here, which was going to decide how much do you want to take the cymbals down in level while you're adjusting it. And then debleed, I think is kind of paired up with reduction. And I think it also tries to remove the bleed of the cymbals from the actual snare when it is open. So it gives you a little control there. And then the length is going to be like when the gate opens up, how long does it stay open? How much of this snare mic do you want to like let through so that the whole sound of the snare is there? Or do you want it to be very short so you just hear like the attack of the snare really quickly and then it goes away again and back into the cymbal bleed? And then down at the bottom here, you've got something called Ghost, which you can turn on. And I believe that will, if you've got a kind of a snare sound that's got a lot of ghost notes in there and you want to like make sure you retain some of that, you can use that. And then sidechain would just be in Pro Tools, for example, you'd come up here and you'd select in the key selection, you'd choose where do you want to pull this in from? Maybe you've got like the snare sending on a snare send, and then you can pull that in there and then hit sidechain, and it's going to make well, this is the snare track, so that wouldn't be the case. But you could sidechain this for the gate to open by some other trigger as well. So again, if you're putting this gate, I'll show you this in a sec. If you put this gate on like the overhead mics and then sidechain it from the snare direct mic, then you get the chance to control the gating even at the overhead cymbals too, or the overhead microphones on the cymbals. So let me show you this. So here again is me adjusting some of these settings on the top of the snare with the silencer plugin. So this is enabled. If I increase this reduction level, then it's doing no reduction. Let me bypass this in and out even with the reduction at 0. And it's already doing stuff. So even the debleed and the length has an effect at this level. And you can come up here, and if you set the threshold too high, it's never opening the gate. If you set it down too low, the gate's never closing. So you're looking to set this threshold right in the zone where it begins to open up just when the snare is being hit. And the higher you set it, the more of that like full volume of the snare needs to happen before it'll open. And then you come over here to the reduction and you can set it way down. If you go extreme, then it basically just makes everything go away like that, which is pretty extreme, right? So you can really make a big difference on that snare. Hopefully this snare is still loud enough for you guys when it's soloed like that. And then if you go debleed, here, let me go to reduction halfway, because 80 decibels is like, even like, listen, by the time you get down to 20, it doesn't make much of a difference beyond that, right? Especially in a mix. So as far as things like reduction goes on a gate, I usually find that anywhere from 10 to 20 dB is going to be plenty for making a difference in the final mix when you open up all the drum mics, because really you're just trying to like take those. You can think about the reduction like if your cymbals were too loud in the full drum mix, when you reduce it, you're just lowering the cymbals a little bit. And so you're not trying to kill them all the way, you just want them down into the right zone. So let me mess with this D-bleed and see what it does. 0 D-bleed sounds like this. Maximum D-bleed sounds not good, right? So that's like too much, it's choking it out. But you can hear how it's basically trying to use you can hear it's like letting some of the cymbal in, but it's like making the snare still sound natural. Let me increase this here too, and let me try less reduction. See what I mean? Like you can try a mix of these two to find a spot where you like the sound of the snare, but it's still getting rid of some of the cymbals. And then I'll show you the length feature, and we'll go really short so you can hear what it does when it's very short length on the snare. It's just going to be really quick sounding. So you can hear that snare, or you can hear the cymbal coming through. Do a little more D-blade. Back to this, trying to stick to that where the hi-hat's really opened up. All right, so now you can hear the difference between nothing on this and enabling the silencer. That's amazing. It's like it got rid of the cymbal, but the snare, even though it's very short, it still sounds like a real snare, which when you blend it into the mix, a lot of times with these things, you know, they might sound a little bit odd by themselves, but by the time you put it back in the mix, it totally makes a difference. So then now let's mess with the length and you'll hear the difference here. So if you go super long with it, then it's letting the whole snare speak when it hits. Go super short, it's a very quick snare attack. So that's the way to think about this length here. And again, I'll even go long here and show you the difference. So here's what it sounds like. Even though it's set really long, here's what it sounds like with the in bypass, the raw. You hear all that cymbal screaming through, right? Now you put on the silencer and you get that level of control that makes a big difference later in the whole mix, which is really cool. All right, so now let me go to the end. Now a reminder, this is where we're riding the crash and it's going crazy on the drums. And this is just in the snare mic. So that crash is coming down, getting into the snare mic. And as you compress and excite the snare, it's bringing that crash out too much. Now let's go into bypass and we'll see what this does. Again, raw snare mic with the crash cymbal, silencer. And if you just set that, leave that D-bleed even at 0%, it's kind of a sweet spot, to be honest. So that's pretty amazing. Here's the difference when you have nothing on the drums. This is going to be the whole drum mix, and I've taken the silencers off. So this is bypassed on the snare, but it's the whole drum mix. Pretty good. I mean, it sounds cool. The drums sound exciting, but there's a lot of that crash coming in. Now here's that same section with the silencer on the snare mics. Bypassed. Coming through. Enabled. Hear it like tighten up like that. You can still hear crash. You're not trying to get rid of the crash completely in the outro. I mean, of course, you want to know that the drummer's riding a crash. You just don't want it to be overwhelming the snare mic. So you can hear that difference. Let me go to the open hi-hat, and I'll give you the before and after. So here's nothing. Here's raw with the raw snare with the open hi-hat. And with the silencer on. Listen to that. Listen how it just like cleans up that hi-hat. Now closed hat, same thing. Open. Silencer. Open hi-hat right here again. Raw with the open hi-hat, bypassed. Silencer. Pretty cool, huh? So let me show you one other cool trick. Cool. I forgot to turn off my do not disturb, so I was probably getting notifications. So this is with, let me go to the outro and I'll try and show you there. So I've got the silencer on the snares, but I tried a little experiment to see how it will work if we put it directly on the overhead mics too. So here's the outro. Now what I've done is I've set this up to where the overhead mics above the drum kit, which are getting all those cymbals, I put the silencer gate on the overheads, but how are we going to trigger it to open up? You can just try setting the threshold so that it kind of hears the snare coming through, but it's going to have a little bit of trouble, finding the snare in that sound with all the cymbals. So I set it up to where the snare is sending an additional send, this one right here. I set up a send that's going over to it's called overhead drums. And it is sending a pre-fader level of the top of the snare mic, acting like a trigger to this. And over here on the key, I just went into overhead drums. So it's kind of like creating a bus called overhead drums in this situation. And then down here on the bottom right, I've enabled the side chain so that it is detecting every time the raw snare hits, it's opening up the gate for the overhead mics. So here's what the overhead mics sound like on that crazy ride and crash cymbal, just raw. This is just the raw sound, just the overhead mics. Okay, now here's enabled with that side chain triggering the opening of the overhead mics. Let's see where I left it. All right, now starting with 0 reduction, tons of reduction. So you can hear, right now you hear the crash coming through the snare. And the question is like, what setting do we want to do that we'll actually that actually makes sense? You can see I selected the top of the snare mic. Oh, I forgot to show you when I did this bottom of the snare one. Let me show you that. If I click on that, you'll notice I had selected the bottom of the snare for that gate too, which is, again, kind of a cool feature. Now they don't have an overhead selection, but again, we're just trying to trigger it based on the snare top. So we've selected the top. We're back on the overhead track. We've selected the top of the snare as its detection circuit. And let's start out with some basic settings and see. We'll just start out with our 0 settings. So like no reduction. Actually, what does it start with? I guess it starts at 40 dB of reduction. We'll just put it at the default. So it's like the middle, 12 o'clock on the reduction, 12 o'clock on D-bleed, 12 o'clock on the length. Sidechain is on. I'm going to set this gate. I'll set the threshold all the way up, which means it's gating and it's not opening up at all until I bring the threshold down, and it's going to hear that incoming snare mic, and then it's going to start opening up the gate, and we'll see what it sounds like. So you can hear it's totally sounding closed. And as I bring it down, okay, let me show you what you're seeing on the screen here too. So threshold is back all the way up, gate is closed, and you'll notice the little white at the bottom is, I believe, what's coming out of the silencer right now. And again, we're on the overhead cymbals, and the big blue image here is the incoming snare mic, which is loud enough to, or that's the incoming overhead mic, but I'm going to bring the threshold down. I think it's the incoming sidechain. When I bring the threshold down, we are going to it's going to start triggering the gate and the silencer to open up. And so we'll start seeing I think the white waveforms will get bigger because that's what's coming out of the gate. Yeah, as soon as I get to here, it starts triggering, and you'll see the white image opens right up and starts to show us the whole snare. So I'll come down lower. And you are hearing the bleed of the cymbal because it is a cymbal mic. I mean, we're hearing the cymbal mic. So now with that as our starting trigger, let's start messing with this reduction and some of these other levels here and just see what kind of sound we can pull out of the overheads. Again, here's what our raw overheads sound like. And so my goal with this would be control the cymbals a little bit more, let that overhead sound of the snare, which gives it that natural drum feel, let that come through a little bit more. So let's put it back in here. And let's see. Here, I'm going to put this back here. I'm going to lower. If I lower the threshold all the way, gates open all the time. Doesn't really help. If I put it down here in the middle somewhere, you can hear it's letting the cymbals go down in between snare hits, but it's starting to open up the snare. And if I adjust this D bleed back a little bit, if I go all the way, it just sounds like it's wide open again. This probably sounds no different than the bypass. Even at this wide open setting, it's like a little bit better than the bypass. All right, I'm gonna bring up the D bleed. You really start to hear it work in that zone right there. Let me bring the threshold down a little bit. Let me increase the length. All right, so now the question is, because I think when you hear this, and this may or may not work. It's a little bit of an experiment on the overheads. But when I hear this, I'm like, that still sounds a little weird to me. I'm not sure if it's going to work. So then the next question is, what does it sound like in the context of the whole drum mix? So let me bypass the overheads. Remember, we have the gate. This is the full drum sound. We have the gates enabled on the snare mics, but we're not messing with the overheads just yet because this is bypassed. And then I'll bring it in and we'll see if we get a little bit more control over that crazy crash cymbal. With that said, I think when I finished this mix earlier, I didn't do this trick and I had already felt pretty good about where the cymbals sat against the snare, but we'll see if we can gain a little more control over it. So snare mics are a little bit hot. I brought it up, that top mic. There you go. So snare's already pretty good and punchy. Getting some good cymbals there screaming through. But you hear it, like you enable this, you can start to get a tiny bit more control. Now let me increase the length because that actually sounds a little cray still. I think my threshold was too low. Remember also, I'm side chaining this with the snare mic. Here's the bypass. Here's enabled. What if I hit ghost? I feel like ghost just sort of, it doesn't know what to do with it, so it sort of undoes it. If I go short length, I feel like long length helps the snare sound a little more natural. And with the reduction set to 0, probably just because it's so hot and so loud already. Also, I put this at the end of my mix chain for the overhead, so the overhead's already getting all the excitement and stuff added to it. But then this bleed kind of gives you the control over that cymbal too. So if you wanted less cymbals, again, here's the full drum mix. Bypassed on the overhead, enabled on the overhead. So if you needed to tighten it up, you've got that And then maybe you could start doing things like bringing in, your room mics a little hotter or something like that. So it's kind of cool that you can try messing with this on some of the other cymbals as well. And I highly recommend you go check this out if you want to try it out. On this video, I don't have time to go into the toms and the kick and stuff. It's already taken a minute to go through everything. But let me just show you the website one more time. You can go get a 14-day trial of this if you want to go try it out. If you buy it, I'm trying to remember how much it was. I think it was something like $49 or something like that. Yeah. So $49 is the price right now on the website. So, it depends on your needs. For me, any plugin that helps me get something done that I need to get done in a mix, if it's going to work for me, I'm just psyched to have it, get it. I'm going to use it on everything. So that seems like a pretty good price. One other thing I wanted to show you, if you guys are looking for any helpful stuff with mixing, you can also go check out my free course called Mix Master Bundle. It's a mixing course that's going to help you take your songs from sounding like basement demos to sounding a lot more like professional mixes, just showing you a bunch of basic mixing techniques that are going to help you dial in stuff using free and stock plugins to get your mixes sounding a whole lot better than where they are. You can just go to the link, which is right in the description of this video, and sign in and get that for free. And it's going to help you take your mixes to the next level. So thanks for watching this video. If you enjoyed this and found any of this helpful, then please hit that like button because it really helps me in the channel here, and subscribe to the channel. We'll see you guys in the next video. Cheers.